All right, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into the world of serial entrepreneur Simon Squibb.
Oh yeah, this guy's a legend.
He's built 19 companies, invested in over 70 more. Talk about a crash course in business. We're dissecting his 30 years of business knowledge video.
A deep dive into a deep dive. I like it.
We had the 2+ hours of pure gold. Way too much to cover in one go, but we've extracted the absolute must-knows for you. And first up, ditch the find your niche advice.
Wait, really? That's like rule number one, isn't it?
That's what makes Squibb so refreshing. He built his agency fluid in a super crowded market.
So he went head to head with the big dogs right from the start. Bold move.
Total confidence. Why? Because his passion was marketing. He even calls it his hobby.
That's the energy we need, turning hobbies into empires.
Exactly. And that's his big framework.
Yeah.
Identify those passions, those things you could geek out on for hours, and build your business around them.
It's about that intrinsic motivation, right? What gets you so fired up that you forget to eat?
Exactly. Squibb even suggests outsourcing everything else. Delegate what you hate, double down on what you love. And speaking of loving what you do, it's not just about being happy, it's a recipe for long-term success.
Passion fuels persistence, which is crucial in the entrepreneurial marathon, not a sprint. And it keeps you ahead of the curve, like Squibb did with email marketing and direct mail way back when.
Always evolving, always ahead of the game. It's like those entrepreneurs who get bored easily. Maybe they just haven't found that sweet spot yet.
Finding that thing that truly lights you up, that's the key.
Okay, so we've got passion as our foundation. But what about that winning formula? Squibb has a surprising answer for us.
Hit me with it.
He calls it delayed gratification.
Okay, sounds like a diet plan. No more midnight snacks.
Think bigger. He's talking about your business model, especially when it comes to pricing. Don't rush the sale.
So slow and steady wins the race.
He literally gave away his services for free to his first client.
Whoa, talk about confidence. What happened?
That client became a huge advocate for over 16 years.
Talk about long-term investment. So build that trust, nurture the relationship, and the rewards will follow.
He uses Facebook as a prime example. They waited years before monetizing their platform.
Building that massive user base first, prioritizing experience over instant profits.
They played the long game and won big. Building a solid foundation first. Speaking of foundations, Squibb also touched on the importance of having a strong moral code baked into your company culture.
Values driven from the ground up. I like it, but he'll unpack that more later on, so stay tuned.
Absolutely. For now, remember, patience is your superpower. Build those relationships, over-deliver on value, and don't be afraid to delay gratification. It might lead to unexpected opportunities.
It's a whole different mindset, shifting from short-term gains to long-term sustainability. Now brace yourself. Squibb's next point is a bit counterintuitive, even a little scary.
Okay, you've got my attention. Lay it on me.
He's a huge proponent of learning how to lose.
Wait, what? Lose? Didn't we start this whole thing talking about winning?
I know, right? But he argues that embracing failure is crucial. He even shared his own story of losing £1 million in a comic book business venture. £1 million.
Wow. Okay, so it's about learning from those mistakes, turning those losses into valuable lessons.
Precisely. It's all about how you view failure. It's not the end of the road. It's a chance to recalibrate and come back stronger. He even calls it the D student advantage.
Okay, now I'm really curious. D student advantage. How does that work?
He says those A students are often paralyzed by the fear of getting a bad grade. They're terrified to take risks. But D students, they're used to messing up. They're more likely to experiment, to dive in head first.
And they're not afraid to color outside the lines because they've already scribbled all over the page.
Exactly. And you know what? They learn and adapt much faster because of it.
It's about building resilience, right? Bouncing back from setbacks, turning those stumbles into opportunities for growth.
Precisely. So instead of fearing failure, we should almost welcome it. As strange as that sounds.
In a way, yes. It's about shifting your mindset. Those D student moments are actually valuable learning opportunities in disguise. Don't be afraid to experiment and maybe even make a mess.
You might be surprised by what you discover on the other side of that mess. Speaking of shaking things up, Squibb has some strong words for the traditional business plan.
He's not a fan, to say the least. He practically declared war on them.
He actually called them Exculpated. I had to look that one up. He is not holding back.
He argues that sticking to a rigid plan can stifle creativity and adaptability, two things that are crucial in today's ever-changing business landscape. Instead, he's all about a more fluid visual approach.
Which leads us to his beloved mind maps. He's obsessed.
He practically vibrates with excitement when he talks about them. But I get it. They're a great way to map out not just your goals, but potential pathways, partnerships, and even your dream team.
It's a much more organic way of planning, wouldn't you say? You're creating a web of possibilities rather than limiting yourself to a single path. Plus, it's visual, which is always a win in my book.
And he walks the walk. He showed us one of his own mind maps, and it wasn't just about the numbers and the bottom line. He included things like team and future possibilities.
It's about creating a business that's not just profitable, but also personally meaningful, something that lights you up from the inside out.
Speaking of finding that spark, let's talk about purpose. This is a theme that pops up again and again throughout Squibb's video.
He's on a mission to help people tap into their true potential.
He seems convinced that everyone has a purpose, but so many of us never actually uncover it, which, according to Squibb, is a tragedy. He's met countless people whose dream life is just a small shift away from their current reality.
Small shift, big impact.
He even told this fascinating story about the genetic similarities between humans and chimpanzees, something like 97% the same DNA.
Yet we're living vastly different realities. What's his point?
He's saying that often a little courage, a willingness to take action, is all that separates us from our dream lives.
Okay, I'm inspired. But how do we bridge that gap? Where do we start?
He actually lays out a really practical three-step process for uncovering your purpose.
All right, let's hear it.
Step 1 is all about being brutally honest with yourself about what you truly love. Not what you think you should love or what looks good on paper, but what truly sets your soul on fire. What do you get lost in?
It's about tuning out the noise and tapping into that inner voice, right?
Exactly. Once you got that clarity, step 2 is identifying the problem you want to solve in the world. What injustice, what issue, what frustration gets you fired up and keeps you up at night?
So it's about channeling that passion into something bigger than yourself, something that makes a real difference.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really good. Step 3 is all about aligning your life with this newfound purpose, figuring out how to actually make it happen.
This is where a lot of people get stuck. They feel overwhelmed, like they need to have it all figured out perfectly before they can even take that first step. It can be paralyzing.
And this is where Squibb drops a major truth bomb.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it alone.
Thank goodness for that. Because let's be honest, entrepreneurship can be a lonely road. Surround yourself with a good team or even just one co-founder who gets you, and suddenly those mountains don't seem so high.
He's a huge advocate for finding a co-founder who shares your values, someone who challenges you but also has your back. But it's not just about finding a business partner. It's about building a support system, finding mentors, plugging into communities where you feel understood and inspired.
It takes a village to raise a startup or something like that. Now, are you ready to talk about something a little less touchy-feely and a bit more action-oriented? Let's talk about sales, marketing, branding, all those things that transform a great idea into a thriving business.
Let's do it. I'm ready to have my mind blown. Hit me with your best sales pitch, Squibb.
Well, he'd probably start by telling you a story. He's big on those. And this one's a doozy. It involves a marketing campaign gone wrong, a high-end jewelry company, and a whole lot of beer-soaked coasters.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. How do those three things even go together?
Well, Squibb had this brilliant idea, at least he thought so at the time. He wanted to sell ad space on coasters in bars.
High engagement, captive audience. I can see the appeal. What went wrong?
He tried to pitch it to this luxury jewelry brand.
Oh no, talk about a brand mismatch. I can only imagine how that meeting went down. Not well, I'm guessing.
Not so much. They weren't exactly thrilled about having their exclusive diamonds associated with sticky bar tables and spilled drinks. Squibb learned a valuable lesson that day. Even the best ideas need to be vetted with your target audience in mind.
Knowing your audience, that's marketing 101. But it's amazing how often it gets overlooked, even by seasoned entrepreneurs.
Totally. It's about understanding their needs, their aspirations, their values, and crafting a message that resonates with them on a deeper level.
It's not about selling what you have, it's about understanding what they need. Speaking of seeing things from a different perspective, Squibb introduced this really cool concept, his staircase philosophy of marketing.
Okay, I'll bite. What does a staircase have to do with marketing?
It all started when he bought a staircase. Not just any staircase, the first ever staircase to be sold in London,
You're kidding. You can buy a whole staircase, like, from a building.
apparently.
Mm.
He snagged it at an auction for a hefty price tag. And here's where the marketing magic comes in. He turned it into this amazing PR stunt.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me everything.
Picture this.
Yeah.
A giant staircase, strategically placed in the middle of Trafalgar Square, a blimp floating above it with his company logo emblazoned on the side, and a doorbell at the bottom inviting people to pitch in business ideas.
No way. That's next level marketing genius. And people actually lined up to ring the doorbell.
Oh yeah, it was a huge hit. And it perfectly illustrates his staircase philosophy. It's about being bold, unexpected, and maybe even a little bit weird. Especially in a world saturated with information and advertising, you have to find those unconventional ways to stand out from the crowd.
Be memorable, be shareable, be the company everyone's talking about because you did something completely unexpected.
Now that's a marketing strategy I can get behind. But let's shift gears from giant staircases and blimps back to the art of actually sealing the deal. Squibb breaks down the sales process into 3 key steps. And it all starts with this really simple, yet often overlooked, principle. Making sure they actually need what you're selling.
It seems obvious, right? But you'd be amazed how many people launch into a sales pitch without taking the time to truly understand their clients' pain points. It's like they're so focused on their own product or service that they forget to consider whether it's actually a good fit for the person they're talking to.
It all comes down to listening, really listening, before you even think about selling. Understand their needs, their challenges, and only then can you position your product or service as the solution they've been searching for.
It's about building trust, establishing yourself as a partner, not just a salesperson. So they need what you've got, what's next.
This is where it gets interesting. Squibb's second step is a bit more personal. He says you have to genuinely like the people you're selling to.
Wait, really? Like, actually like them?
He's adamant about this. He believes that building a business on transactions with people you don't respect or enjoy being around is a surefire recipe for unhappiness.
So it's about finding those clients who not only need what you're selling, but who you also connect with on a personal level. Clients who inspire you, challenge you, and make you excited to show up and do your best work.
He shared a story about walking away from a potentially lucrative deal because he didn't vibe with the client. Apparently the client was rude to a waiter, and that was a deal breaker for Squibb. He knew that even if the deal brought in a lot of money, it would end up costing him in terms of stress and happiness.
Talk about values-based business. He's not just chasing profits. He's building a life he loves, surrounded by people he respects.
I like that. Okay, so we've got the need, we've got the connection. What's the final step in Squibb's sales trifecta? The close, of course. But he argues that if you've nailed the first 2 steps, identifying a genuine need and building a strong, values-aligned relationship, the sale should almost close itself. It becomes less about convincing and more about collaborating to find a solution that works for everyone.
It's less about selling and more about serving.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean you should give up easily. Squibb is a big believer in persistence. He even cited a study that found top salespeople reach out to a potential client an average of 5 times before throwing in the towel.
5 times. Most people give up after 2. So it's about being politely persistent, consistently nurturing those relationships, and demonstrating that you're genuinely invested in providing value.
He said the top 1% of salespeople take it even further. They don't just stop at 5 attempts. They continue to nurture those relationships indefinitely, always looking for opportunities to connect and provide value, even if it takes years for a deal to materialize. He actually shared a story about landing a major client after 9 years of reaching out. 9 years.
9 years. Talk about playing the long game. What was his secret? How do you maintain that level of persistence without becoming, well, annoying?
It all circles back to building genuine connections, staying on their radar, and recognizing that a no today doesn't necessarily mean a no forever. People's circumstances change, businesses evolve, and that persistent yet respectful follow-up can pay off in unexpected ways.
It's about playing the long game, building those relationships based on trust and mutual respect. Now let's switch gears from sales to something a little sexier. PR Squibb believes that getting featured in the press is crucial for any business looking to make a splash. And he had some pretty unconventional advice for making it happen.
Yeah, he's not talking about blasting out generic press releases and hoping for the best. He's all about being strategic and building those genuine relationships with journalists, which, as we've established, is a recurring theme for Squibb.
Exactly. His first tip: Target the right journalists. Don't just spam every media outlet under the sun. Do your research, identify the journalists who cover your industry or niche, and personalize your pitch to their specific interests. It shows that you've done your homework and that you're not just looking for free publicity.
It's about being intentional with your outreach, showing that you understand their work and that you have something valuable to offer their audience.
He even had this really clever hack for building those relationships with journalists.
But
Engage with their work.
love it. So simple, yet so effective. Instead of just pitching yourself, become part of the conversation. Leave thoughtful comments on their articles, share their social media posts, make yourself known, but in a genuine, non-spammy way.
Exactly. Show that you're paying attention, that you value their work, and that you're not just looking for a free ride. Position yourself as a resource, someone who can offer valuable insights and expertise on the topics they cover. Because let's be honest, journalists are always on the lookout for credible sources.
And if you can become that go-to expert in their mind, you're golden. It's a win-win. They get access to valuable insights, and you get increased visibility for your business. It's all about building those mutually beneficial relationships.
And don't forget, your personal brand matters. Squibb pointed out that journalists are increasingly looking at the founders or CEOs when deciding whether to cover a company. So it's not just about your company's brand, it's about your personal brand too.
So be mindful of your online presence, what you post on social media, the image you're projecting to the world, because in today's interconnected world, it all matters. Now let's talk about something that can make or break a startup: funding. Specifically, how to navigate the often intimidating world of investors.
Squibb has some really insightful advice for entrepreneurs looking to secure funding, starting with this really important question: do you actually need an investor?
That's such a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of raising capital, but it's crucial to step back and consider whether it's actually the right move for your business at this stage.
Exactly. Raising money can be incredibly time-consuming, not to mention the pressure it can put on you and your team. And let's not forget about the equity you'll be giving up in exchange for that capital. It's not a decision to be taken lightly.
So before you even start thinking about pitching to investors, explore your other options. Squibb suggests considering things like crowdfunding, pre-selling your product or service, or even partnering with a client who might be willing to invest in your expansion in exchange for exclusive access to your products or services.
It's about being creative and finding the funding solution that aligns with your specific needs and goals. Now, if you do decide that bringing on investors is the right move, Squibb stresses the importance of finding investors who are the right FIT, not just financially, but also culturally.
He actually compared taking on an investor to getting a new boss.
Mm.
And we've all had those bosses who make our lives miserable, right? So
Yeah.
it's about doing your due diligence, just like you would with any other important relationship. Understand their values, their investment philosophy, their communication style. Make sure you're aligned on the big picture.
Absolutely. You're going to be working closely with these people, so it's essential to make sure you can build a strong, collaborative relationship that goes beyond just the numbers. Squibb suggests starting with the most accessible network, family and friends. But he also cautioned against overselling the opportunity, especially to loved ones.
Honesty and transparency are key. Be upfront about the risks involved and make sure they understand that this is not a guaranteed return on investment.
Now, if you're venturing beyond your immediate circle, Squibb recommends targeting angel investors. But here's the surprising part. He says the best way to approach an angel investor is not to ask for money.
Wait, what? How do you get an angel investor to invest without even mentioning money? That sounds like some Jedi mind trick.
He suggests framing the conversation around seeking their aid advice. Remember, angel investors are often successful entrepreneurs themselves. They have a wealth of experience and knowledge that can be invaluable to a first-time founder. By approaching them for guidance rather than just a check, you're appealing to their desire to contribute, to mentor, to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
It's about tapping into their expertise and making them feel valued for their contributions beyond just their financial resources.
And he's not just saying this, remember, he's invested in over 70 companies himself. He's been on both sides of the table. And he says the best entrepreneurs he's worked with always made him feel like a valued partner, not just a walking ATM.
It's about building those genuine connections, demonstrating that you value their input and that you're in this for the long haul. Now let's talk about the big leagues venture capitalists, those firms with deep pockets who are always on the lookout for the next unicorn.
Squibb had some great advice for navigating the VC world, starting with making sure they actually have money to invest.
You'd be surprised how many entrepreneurs waste time pitching to VCs who are fully deployed, meaning they've already allocated all their capital for the year.
Do your research. Understand their investment focus, their portfolio companies, their stage of investment. Make sure you're a good fit before you even think about crafting that pitch deck.
And he had some really clever strategies for grabbing their attention. For example, if you can identify a VC who's already invested in one of your competitors, use that to your advantage. Position yourself as the disruptor, the one who's going to shake things up in that space.
Appeal to their competitive spirit. They don't want to miss out on the next big thing, especially if a rival is already in the game.
He also recommends leveraging your network. Reach out to other founders who've received funding from that VC. A warm intro can make all the difference.
And here's a strategy you don't hear every day. Consider partnering with your clients or brand partners to fund your growth.
Okay, that's interesting. So instead of going the traditional funding route, look for opportunities to collaborate with companies who are already aligned with your vision and who could benefit from your growth.
Exactly. He shared a story about a client who actually funded his company's expansion into a new market. The client desperately needed his services in that region, and rather than going through the hassle of finding a new provider, they offered to foot the bill for his expansion in exchange for a guaranteed partnership. It was a win-win for everyone involved.
Love it. It's a great reminder to think outside the box and explore all your options. Now, let's talk about building a brand that lasts. Squibb is a big believer in the power of a strong company brand, not just a personal brand, though that's important too, especially when it comes to PR, as we discussed earlier.
He said a strong brand is like a magnet, attracting customers, investors, and potential acquirers down the line. It's the foundation upon which you build everything else.
And that foundation needs to be strong,
Yeah.
right? So how do we build it?
Squibb believes it all starts with defining your core values. Not just what sounds good on a mission statement, but those non-negotiables that truly define who you are as a company. What do you say yes to? And more importantly, what do you say no to?
It's about having that clear sense of identity, those guiding principles that inform every decision you make, from the clients you work with to the partnerships you form.
He suggested two main approaches to brand building: the reference model and the leadership model.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these models.
The reference model involves partnering with individuals or organizations that embody your brand values. Think Nike sponsoring top athletes, for example, or a sustainable clothing brand partnering with environmental organizations.
So it's about aligning yourself with people and organizations that reflect your values and resonate with your target audience.
Exactly. The leadership model, on the other hand, is all about having a strong, visible leader who embodies the company's values and becomes the face of the brand.
Think Steve Jobs and Apple, or Elon Musk and Tesla. Charismatic leaders who embody the spirit of their brands. I like it.
But here's the thing. Brand values and equity ownership go hand in hand. The people who own a part of your company are inevitably going to influence your brand, whether you like it or not.
That's a great point. It's about being really intentional about who you bring on board, both in terms of investors and team members. Speaking of building a strong team, Squibb had some interesting insights into hiring.
It all circles back to purpose, which, at this point, should come as no surprise.
It's like that secret ingredient he sprinkles into everything.
Right. He believes that hiring shouldn't be just about skills and experience on paper. It's about finding people who resonate with your company's core values and mission. People who get excited about what you're building, who are eager to contribute their unique talents to the cause.
He used the phrase building a tribe, not just a team. And I love that. When you find those people who are aligned with your values, who share your vision, it's no longer just a job, it's a shared mission. You're building something meaningful together.
Exactly. And those shared values, that sense of purpose, it creates a level of loyalty and engagement that you just can't manufacture. It comes from within. Now, the million-dollar question is, how do you actually find these purpose-aligned individuals?
Right, because they're not just going to magically appear at your doorstep, as much as we'd like them to. Spill the beans, Squibb.
Well, he has some rather unconventional advice. He suggests looking beyond the resume and checking out their social media activity.
Oh, I like where this is going. Social media as a window into someone's soul.
Exactly. Obviously, you want to be respectful and not go full-on stalker mode, but browsing their social media profiles can give you valuable insights into their passions, their interests, what they care about outside of their work life.
It's a way to get a sense of their personality, their values, whether they'd be a good cultural fit for your company.
He's also a big advocate for checking references, even though it's become less common these days.
References are gold. Talking to previous employers, colleagues, clients, it can give you invaluable insights into a candidate's work ethic, their communication style, how they handle pressure, and it shows that you're thorough, that you're serious about finding the right fit.
Now, are you ready for a radical idea? Squibb suggests giving your employees equity in the business.
Talk about aligning interests. Turn those employees into mini entrepreneurs.
Exactly. When they have skin in the game, they're not just working for a paycheck, they're building something bigger than themselves. And let's be honest, who doesn't love feeling like an owner?
He acknowledged that giving equity can be complex, but he believes the benefits far outweigh the risks. He even argues that it can actually make your business more attractive to potential investors down the line.
It shows that you're invested in your team, that you believe in their potential. Investors love that. It's a sign of a healthy company culture. Now let's talk about growth. You've got your passion, you've built your team, you've secured funding. How do you actually take your business to the next level?
Give me the secret sauce, Squibb.
Well, he'd probably tell you that there's no secret sauce. Or rather, the secret sauce is different for everyone. It depends on your goals, your values, your definition of success.
Okay, that's fair. One size doesn't fit all when it comes to business growth.
Exactly. He encourages entrepreneurs to be really honest with themselves about their motivations for wanting to grow their business. Is it about building a legacy, creating something that outlives you? Or is it about generating wealth, achieving financial freedom?
Maybe it's about making a positive impact on the world, leaving the planet a little better than you found it.
Whatever your definition of success, Squibb says it all starts with defining your destination. What are you working towards? What does that finish line look like for you? Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
And once you've defined your destination, he emphasized the importance of building systems and processes that can support that growth.
Because if you're the only one who can do what you do, you're not building a business, you're building a job for yourself. And that can be incredibly limiting, not to mention exhausting.
So true. It's about working on your business, not just in your business, right?
Exactly. And that means building a team you trust, delegating tasks effectively, and creating systems that can run smoothly even when you're not there to micromanage every detail.
It's about creating a business that works for you, not the other way around.
Now, are you ready to dream even bigger? Let's talk about going global. Squibb is a firm believer in expanding into new markets. He argues that it can actually reduce risk by diversifying revenue streams and tapping into new customer bases.
That makes sense. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But going global can feel daunting, even overwhelming for entrepreneurs who are just starting out. Any advice for those of us who aren't quite ready to conquer the world?
He says it doesn't have to be this massive, complex undertaking. Start small. Explore options like franchising, partnering with local distributors, or leveraging online platforms to reach customers in new markets.
The beauty of today's interconnected world is that you don't need a physical presence in a country to start building a customer base there. It's about being creative, thinking outside those geographical boundaries, and not being afraid to dip your toes into new waters. Who knows what opportunities might be waiting for you across the globe? Now, before we wrap things up, let's talk about something that comes up again and again in the entrepreneurial world: mentorship. It seems like everyone is either seeking a mentor or being asked to be one.
It's become this almost mythical concept, but Squibb has a refreshingly practical take on it.
Lay it on me. Because let's be honest, finding a good mentor can feel as elusive as spotting a unicorn in the wild.
Well, here's a thought. What if we've been thinking about mentorship all wrong? Squibb actually believes that the whole concept of mentorship has been somewhat overhyped. He argues that often what entrepreneurs are really seeking is something much more specific than a general mentor.
Okay, that makes sense. Instead of searching for that one perfect mentor to guide you through every twist and turn of your entrepreneurial journey, maybe it's about being more targeted in your approach.
Exactly. He said, and I quote, "If you need someone to hold you accountable, find a co-founder. If you're struggling with sales, hire a salesperson. If you have specific questions, just ask."
He's all about taking ownership of your learning and seeking out the specific resources you need to grow your business, rather than expecting one person to have all the answers. Love it. It's simple, practical, and actionable.
Now, he's not saying mentorship is completely useless. He acknowledges that it can be valuable in certain situations. But his key piece of advice is to be discerning. Don't just ask anyone to be your mentor. Do your research. Understand their background, their values, their areas of expertise. And don't just hit them with a vague, "Will you be my mentor?" plea. That's a surefire way to get a polite no.
Instead, approach them with specific questions, specific challenges you're facing, demonstrating that you've put thought into what you hope to gain from the relationship. And don't forget to offer value in return.
It's a two-way street. Mentorship should be mutually beneficial. So demonstrate your expertise, offer to help them with a project, build that relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and appreciation.
It reminds me of the saying, the best way to get a mentor is to be one.
Love that. Okay, are you ready to dive into something a little more technical but equally crucial for any entrepreneur to understand? Let's talk about equity.
The E word. It can be a bit intimidating, especially for first-time founders, but it's essential to have a solid understanding of equity if you're planning to build a successful, sustainable business. I'm ready to learn.
This is where things can get messy, especially if you don't have a solid understanding of the basics. Luckily, Squibb has a wealth of experience in this arena, both as an entrepreneur who's raised capital and as an investor himself. He's seen firsthand how the wrong equity structure can lead to conflict, frustration, and even business failure.
Okay, so let's break it down. Where do we even begin?
He starts by debunking a common misconception that owning less than 50% of your company means you've lost control. He emphasized that control is actually determined by the shareholder agreement, which outlines things like voting rights and decision-making processes.
So even if you own a minority stake, you can still have a significant say in how the business is run if the shareholder agreement is structured in a way that protects your interests.
Exactly. And this is where things get really important. He stressed the importance of having a crystal clear understanding of where you want to take your business before you even think about selling equity.
Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Right. Or nowhere at all. He's seen it happen time and time again. Entrepreneurs make hasty decisions early on, driven by a fear of missing out or a desperate need for cash, only to regret those decisions later down the line when they have a clearer vision for their business but have already given away too much equity.
It's about playing the long game, thinking about the bigger picture, and making sure that every decision you make today supports the vision you have for your company's future.
And that includes being really strategic about who you bring on board as investors. He cautioned against selling too much equity in the early stages, especially if you anticipate raising multiple rounds of funding.
Because if you give away too much of the company too soon, you might not have enough left to incentivize those later stage investors who come with deeper pockets and more connections.
Exactly. He recommends keeping a healthy chunk of equity reserved for future funding rounds. Now, what about splitting equity among co-founders?
Ah, the million-dollar question. And a recipe for disaster if not handled correctly. What does the wise Squibb have to say on this delicate subject?
He actually warned against the common and often tempting mistake of giving a slightly larger equity stake to the person who came up with the business idea. The idea guy.
Yeah, the one who had that initial spark of genius,
Yeah.
often on a napkin at a bar after one too many beers.
Right. And while having great ideas is obviously important, Squibb argues that it's only a small part of the equation when it comes to building a successful business. He's seen it time and again, this dynamic where one co-founder feels entitled to a bigger piece of the pie just because they had the initial idea. And it almost always leads to resentment and conflict down the line.
Because building a business is about so much more than just having a good idea. It's about execution, perseverance, teamwork, and a million other things that often fall on the shoulders of the co-founders who weren't there for that initial aha moment, but who are equally committed to bringing that vision to life.
Exactly. So instead of focusing on who came up with the idea, he advocates for a more equitable approach, where equity is distributed based on contributions, value creation, and long-term commitment to the business. It's about having those open and honest conversations early on, clearly defining roles, responsibilities, and how contributions will be measured and rewarded.
And don't forget the paperwork. Squibb is a big believer in having everything in writing.
Oh, absolutely. He recommends having a crystal clear shareholder agreement in place that outlines things like the decision-making process, voting rights, equity splits, vesting schedules, exit strategies, you name it.
Because if it's not in writing, it basically didn't happen.
Right. It's about protecting everyone involved, ensuring that everyone is on the same page, and minimizing the potential for misunderstandings or disagreements down the line.
It's like that old saying, good fences make good neighbors. Except in this case, it's good contracts make good co-founders. Now, determining the actual value of your company, especially in the early stages, can feel a bit like trying to predict the weather.
It's more art than science, that's for sure. But luckily, Squibb has some practical advice for navigating this tricky terrain.
Hit me with those valuation hacks, Squibb.
Well, he suggests exploring alternative investment agreements like a SAFE, which stands for Simple Agreement for Future Equity. It's a popular option for early stage startups because it allows investors to get in early without having to get bogged down in those complex valuation negotiations.
So it's a simpler, more streamlined approach than traditional valuation methods, which can be incredibly time-consuming and expensive, especially for startups that are just getting off the ground.
Exactly. And he also had some great tips for keeping your financial house in order, which, let's be honest, is not the sexiest part of building a business, but it's absolutely crucial.
Because nobody wants to be that entrepreneur who's killing it on the sales front, but can't tell you their burn rate or their customer acquisition cost.
Right. He stressed the importance of keeping a close eye on your cap table, which is essentially a document that tracks the ownership structure of your company.
So it's like a map of who owns what percentage of your company at any given time. And it's essential to make sure this document is always up to date, especially if you're planning to raise more funding or eventually sell your business.
Exactly. The last thing you want is to be in the middle of a funding round or acquisition and realize your cap table is a mess. It can kill a deal faster than you can say due diligence. He also had some strong opinions on giving equity to employees, which you might be surprised to hear he is a huge advocate for.
Really, even early on when every percentage point feels so precious.
He believes that sharing ownership with your team is one of the most powerful ways to build loyalty, engagement, and a sense of shared purpose. He argues that when employees feel like they're true stakeholders in the business, when they have skin in the game, they're more likely to go the extra mile, to think like owners, and to stick around for the long haul.
It makes sense. Nobody watches a rental car. People take better care of things they own.
Exactly. He recommends exploring options like stock options, which give employees the right to purchase company shares at a predetermined price, or even offering actual equity in the company, which gives them a direct ownership stake.
It's about finding the approach that aligns with your company culture and goals. And remember, you don't have to give away the farm on day one. You can always start small and increase equity grants as the company grows and employees prove their value.
Absolutely. And he also stressed the importance of creating a vesting schedule for any employee equity, which basically means that employees gradually earn their ownership stake over time, typically over a period of 3 to 4 years.
It's a way to incentivize employees to stick around and contribute to the company's long-term growth while also protecting the company in case an employee decides to leave or is asked to leave.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between rewarding loyalty and commitment while also safeguarding the company's interests. Now, are you ready to talk about the ultimate goal for many entrepreneurs? Exiting the business.
The grand finale, the moment you've been working towards all these years. What's Squibb's take on making a graceful and hopefully lucrative exit?
His advice here might surprise you. He says the best way to successfully sell your business is to not actually want to sell it.
Wait, what? How do you sell something you don't want to sell? Isn't that the opposite of how sales works?
He argues that when you're not actively seeking a buyer, when you're not desperate to cash out, it puts you in a much stronger negotiating position. Buyers can sense desperation and they'll use it to their advantage.
So it's all about building a business so good, so profitable, so damn irresistible that buyers come knocking on your door, begging to give you money.
Exactly. He shared his experience selling his first company, Fluid, to PricewaterhouseCoopers. He wasn't actively looking to sell, but they approached him after working together on a project and being blown away by his team's talent and expertise.
That's the dream, right? When you're so good at what you do that opportunities just seem to land in your lap.
Right. And it highlights a key piece of advice he repeated throughout the video: focus on building a remarkable business, a business that solves real problems, a business that delights its customers, and the rest will follow.
Love it. But what about those of us who aren't quite ready to entertain acquisition offers? Any other unconventional exit strategies up his sleeve?
He's not a big fan of working with business brokers, believing they often have their own agendas, which may not always align with your best interests. Instead, he suggested potentially partnering with companies that could be future acquirers. It's about playing the long game, building relationships with companies that might be a good strategic fit down the line, and positioning yourself for a potential acquisition when the time is right.
Because sometimes the best deals are the ones you don't even have to negotiate.
Exactly. He also cautioned against merging with a competitor, which while it might seem like a good idea on the surface, doesn't always result in the best valuation or the smoothest transition. It's about exploring all your options and finding the exit strategy that aligns with your goals, both financially and personally.
He also brought up the option of a management buyout, which is where your leadership team pools their resources and buys the business from you. It's a great way to ensure a smooth transition, especially if you've built a strong leadership team and you're confident in their ability to continue steering the ship.
It can also be a really rewarding way to exit a business, knowing that you're leaving it in the hands of people who are passionate about its future and who've been instrumental in its success.
So to sum it all up, build a business you're passionate about, a business that thrives, a business you might not even want to part with. Because when you're not attached to the outcome, when you're genuinely enjoying the journey, that's when the magic happens.
I love that. It's not just about the destination, it's about enjoying the ride. And speaking of embracing the unknown, let's talk about a topic that often gets shrouded in mystery and superstition: luck. Squibb, ever the pragmatist, believes we can actually hack luck.
Okay, I'm intrigued but also a little skeptical. I'm not usually one for all that law of attraction, manifesting your destiny stuff, but Squibb usually knows what he's talking about, so I'm all ears.
Yeah.
How do we hack this thing called luck?
Well, he starts by debunking the myth that luck is some mystical force outside our control, something we either have or we don't. He argues that we can actively create our own luck by adopting a specific mindset and taking intentional action.
Okay, I'm listening. Give me step one.
Persistence. It's about not giving up on your dreams, even when faced with setbacks, rejection, or self-doubt. He believes that most people give up far too easily, often right before that big breakthrough is about to happen. They get discouraged, they lose steam, they start listening to those inner voices of doubt.
It's like that saying, most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Exactly. It's about playing the long game, consistently showing up, even when you're not seeing those immediate results, trusting that all those small efforts are adding up to something bigger.
It's about having that unwavering belief in yourself and your vision, even when the going gets tough. Which, let's be honest, it inevitably will at some point.
Entrepreneurship is a marathon, not a sprint. And just like a marathon runner, you need that inner reservoir of resilience and determination to get you through those tough miles.
So you're saying instead of relying on luck to magically strike, we should focus on building those muscles of persistence and determination, because those are qualities we can control.
Exactly. And you know what? I think that ties back to his earlier point about finding your passion. Because when you're genuinely excited about what you're doing, you're much more likely to persevere through those inevitable challenges.
It's a lot easier to get back up after a stumble when you're running towards something you love, something that lights you up from the inside out.
Okay, so we've got persistence as step one in our luck hacking journey. What's next?
Give me all the lucky tips.
His second tip is all about clarity. Specifically, knowing your destination. What does success actually look like for you?
Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Right. Or, as we discussed earlier, nowhere at all. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind, chasing after other people's definitions of success, that we forget to define what truly matters to us.
And that looks different for everyone, right? There's no one-size-fits-all definition of success.
Exactly. For some people, it might be building a billion-dollar company. For others, it might be creating a lifestyle business that gives them the freedom to travel the world. Or maybe it's something else entirely. The point is, you have to define it for yourself. Otherwise, you'll spend your life chasing after someone else's dream.
And I love that he shared his personal definition of success, which for him right now looks like being present for his son, making it to the gym, living a balanced life. It's a good reminder that success isn't just about the numbers. It's about living a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think that's a huge part of hacking luck. Because when you're clear on your values, when you know what truly matters to you, it's amazing how the universe seems to conspire to help you create that reality.
Okay, I'm feeling those lucky vibes already. We've got persistence, we've defined our destination. What's the final element in Squibb's luck hacking formula?
Embrace risk. He believes that the more risks you take, the more opportunities you create.
That makes sense. If you're not putting yourself out there, if you're always playing it safe, you're missing out on those serendipitous encounters, those unexpected opportunities that can change the trajectory of your life.
Exactly. He even went so far as to say that the harder you work, the luckier you get adage is a complete myth.
Yeah, because if that were true, then nurses, teachers, construction workers, all those people who work incredibly hard, often under incredibly challenging conditions, would be the luckiest people on the planet. And let's be honest, that's not always the case.
Right. He believes that luck is often a byproduct of putting yourself out there, taking calculated risks, and being open to new possibilities.
It's about embracing uncertainty, knowing that you won't always get it right, and being willing to learn and adapt along the way.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Simon Squibb's 30 years of business wisdom.
It's pretty inspiring to hear someone with his track record talk about risk with so much excitement. It's like he's saying, get out there, get your hands dirty, and don't be afraid to make a few mistakes along the way.
Exactly. It's about reframing failure as a stepping stone to success. And that brings us to the real heart of what we've been unpacking from Squibb's decades of experience.
He really wants entrepreneurs to understand that they have agency, that they can shape their own destinies, even if it means bending the rules a bit.
He's a big believer in challenging conventional wisdom, finding what works for you, and building a business that aligns with your unique vision and values.
I think that's such a powerful message, especially for anyone feeling a bit lost or overwhelmed on their entrepreneurial journey. It's not about following some rigid formula for success. It's about tapping into your own internal compass, trusting your gut, and being willing to forge your own path.
He encourages entrepreneurs to be bold, be authentic, and most importantly, be themselves.
I think that's a great note to end on. It's not just about building a business. It's about building something you're proud of, something that lights you up, something that reflects your unique perspective and talents.
It's about finding that sweet spot where passion, purpose, and profit intersect.
I love that. And there you have it, your deep dive into the brilliant mind of Simon Squibb. We've unpacked his unconventional wisdom on everything from finding your passion to hacking luck, building a tribe, and even selling your business by not wanting to sell it.
We hope these insights have sparked some new ideas, challenged a few assumptions, and maybe even inspired you to take a leap of faith on your own entrepreneurial journey.
And remember, as with any good deep dive, it's not just about absorbing the information. It's about taking what resonates with you and putting it into action.
Experiment, iterate, and don't be afraid to forge your own path.
Until next time, happy diving.